If you've ever noticed that you can feel deeply connected to someone very quickly, you're not alone. Some people can meet someone new, have a few meaningful conversations, share a few vulnerable moments, and suddenly that person feels incredibly important to them. They start thinking about them often, waiting for their messages, feeling unusually affected by small changes in tone. It happens fast, sometimes so fast that even they notice it. And from the outside, people might call it being too emotional or too attached. But psychologically, it usually means something very different. Because people who get attached quickly are rarely reacting to the present moment alone. They're responding to something much older. When someone gets attached quickly, the first thing you often notice is how much emotional weight small interactions start to carry. A delayed reply can feel unusually significant. A short message can be interpreted in many different ways. A kind gesture can feel deeply reassuring. It's not just communication anymore. It starts to feel like emotional confirmation. And this isn't about being dramatic. It's about how the brain processes connection. For people who attach quickly, emotional closeness often activates something powerful, a sense of safety. Not just liking someone, but feeling seen. And when the brain experiences that kind of emotional recognition, it doesn't treat it as something casual. It treats it as something important, something that shouldn't be lost. That's why people who attach quickly often invest emotionally much earlier than others. They start imagining deeper connection. They pay attention to subtle shifts in behavior. They become more emotionally present. From the outside, it might look like rushing, but internally, it often feels like finally finding something that feels right. And when something feels emotionally right, the mind doesn't always slow down to question it. It moves toward it. Another thing you'll often notice is how much internal thinking starts to happen. Small moments replay in the mind. Messages get reread. Conversations get analyzed. Not because the person is trying to create drama, but because when attachment forms quickly, the mind starts scanning for emotional signals, signals of reassurance, signals of distance, signals of change. And this scanning process is actually the brain trying to maintain emotional stability. It's not weakness, it's protection. People who attach quickly also tend to be highly responsive to emotional energy. They notice tone changes. They sense when someone feels distant. They pick up on things that others might overlook. This kind of sensitivity can be exhausting, but it also reveals something deeper about how their emotional system works. Their brain is wired to prioritize relationships. Connection isn't just something nice to have. It's something their nervous system actively tracks. But here's where it gets interesting. The real reason people attach quickly isn't usually about the other person. It's about familiarity. Because the brain is constantly searching for emotional patterns it already understands. Even when meeting someone new, the mind is asking one quiet question. Does this feel familiar? Not logically, but emotionally. If someone's tone, attention, warmth, or personality matches patterns, the brain already associates with closeness. Attachment can form very fast. Sometimes, before the person even realizes it, the brain isn't necessarily evaluating the person carefully. It's recognizing a pattern. And patterns often come from early emotional experiences. The way attention was given, the way affection appeared, the way emotional safety was felt, or sometimes withheld. Over time, the brain builds an internal blueprint for what connection feels like. So when someone enters your life who accidentally fits that blueprint, the emotional system can activate very quickly. It feels natural, comfortable, almost magnetic, even if the relationship itself is still new. This is why people who attach quickly sometimes feel confused by their own reactions. Part of them knows the connection is still developing, but another part of them already feels emotionally invested, because psychologically, attachment doesn't always follow time. It follows recognition. There's also another layer people don't talk about often. For some individuals, attaching quickly is tied to emotional awareness. They don't keep their feelings distant or guarded. They feel them fully. When they appreciate someone, they feel it. When they sense connection, they respond to it. That openness can look intense in a world where many people are emotionally cautious. But intensity doesn't always mean instability. Sometimes it simply means someone allows themselves to experience connection honestly. At the same time, quick attachment can create vulnerability. Because when emotional investment happens early, the sense of loss can also feel stronger if the connection fades. And that's where people sometimes start questioning themselves. They sometimes wonder why their emotions appeared so quickly, but the pattern itself isn't random. It's the mind trying to recognize belonging. Once you begin to understand this, the behavior starts to make more sense. The fast emotional closeness, thinking too much, the sensitivity to small signals, none of it appears out of nowhere. It comes from a deeper psychological pattern, one built over years of emotional learning. And once you see that pattern, the behavior stops looking irrational. It starts looking human. Because getting attached quickly isn't just about attachment. It's about how the brain searches for connection, familiarity, and emotional safety. And when it finds something that resembles those things, it moves toward it, sometimes faster than expected. Once you notice this pattern, it changes the way you see those reactions. They stop looking like impulsive emotions. They start looking like a system that learned to value connection very deeply. Once you see it, you can't really unsee it. It was never random. It was a pattern. If this helped you understand something about yourself or someone else, consider liking the video and subscribing for more psychology insights. And if any part of this felt familiar, share your thoughts in the comments. Because the more we understand these patterns, the clearer human behavior begins to feel. Understanding yourself is where that clarity begins.